What's good, everybody? Welcome to Ben's Blades. Today I'm going to do a phosphor bronze upgrade on this knife right here. This is a Les George ESV. ESV, as far as I'm aware, stands for Extra Short VECP. So it's an acronym inside of an acronym. Figure that one out. Let's talk about this knife for a second really quickly. This is S45VN. We have a 2.6 inch blade. We have titanium scales on either side. This knife I got at an eBay auction, so it's used, of course. I think these go for about $425 brand new, back when you could get them. These are mid-tech or semi-custom knives that don't come around very often. I paid $350 for mine, so I think I did pretty okay on that. This knife does run on bearings, so putting a phosphor bronze set of washers in there is going to be interesting. If I had to guess, I gotta say I don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to try. How do I know this? Well, because here is a Hinderer XM18 that is currently running on phosphor bronze, and it just barely flips. I finally, I sat there watching a movie the other day and just like broke this thing loose on phosphor bronze. I did this for like the whole movie, just to try to make sure that the phosphor bronze was going to wear in and that the knife would function. I finally got it to where it'll flip, but it is not drop shutty at all. I mean, you almost can't even shake it shut. So I'm guessing that doing it with this knife is probably not going to work at all, just because the knife blade is so short that there's no momentum to defeat the resistance of the phosphor bronze. But nonetheless, I want to give it a try. I want to see what happens. This disassembly should be a lot easier than the last two videos, because I tend to take apart frame lock knives a lot, and they're just easier to take apart anyway. Here is the phosphor bronze washers from Skiff Workshop. These are the ones that you're going to need if you're going to try to do this particular project. There we go. And I guess let's just get right into it. So that pivot is a T ridiculous, T something, I don't even know. I'm just going to go straight to a T12 and see how that goes. T10, well, we go from T10 to a T15. Let's try a T15. And it's still a little loose, even at a T15. Let me see if I can go up a little bit. I don't think I can, though. T20, yeah, there's no way. Yeah, no. So I'm going to need to use a T15 on the pivot. And then let's try T10 on the... No, that's looking like T8. Let's try that. Yep. So we have a T15 and a T8 that we're working with. So let me grab my Mac Tools mini ratchet and let's get this pivot loose. I haven't taken this apart to clean it since I bought it, so I don't know what's in it, but we're going to find out. All right, hold on to your blades. Oh, interesting. That pivot was very loose. That didn't need any help at all. So there's that. Now, actually, let me deploy the blade because they're easier to take apart when the blade is deployed. Let's go from a T15 down to the T8. I'm just going to let these fall where they will. Ooh, there we go. That was kind of tough to break that one loose. And this one. I'm hoping not to take the pocket clip off, so if I can avoid that, that would be nice. Now this should just kind of come apart. It does seem a little tight though. Ooh, I wonder if this thing has ever been apart. Let me put it back closed again. No, it does need to probably be open by the sounds of it. It's just tight. Probably because it hasn't been taken apart before. Is that all just the pivot? I think it's the pivot. It's just that tight. Let me try just pushing the pivot out. No, that's not coming out like that. Okay. Well, I had the nerve to think this was going to be easy. So what do we do now? Let me try just kind of jerking on it a little bit and see if it'll just break loose. That is one tight pivot. Wow. About to break a fingernail trying to get this apart. All right. Well, that escalated quickly. I really wish I had gotten this on camera. I turned the camera off for a minute because I wanted to look on a couple of blade forums, knife forums, to see if there's a trick to getting this knife apart. And I forgot to turn the camera back on, and I'm just pulling apart on the knife scales, and all of a sudden this knife just grenaded. It came flying apart in an explosion of loose parts, and everything landed exactly where you see it. So right here, there is the bearings that the knife runs on, if I can get it to focus. So we're going to try to put phosphor bronze in there instead. And it looks like when it came flying apart, it got me a little bit. So let me wipe this off. So yeah, that was interesting. And it looks like this pivot is not going anywhere. It is in there so tight, I can't even push it out of the knife. Maybe it's not meant to come out. I have no idea. In any case, here we are with this knife blown apart before our very eyes. So hopefully getting it back together isn't going to be as hard. Let's clean it off using the typical stuff that I use, the Slip 2725. And we're just going to wipe this thing down all over the place. This knife doesn't look like it was used all that much. I carried it for a while after I bought it a few months ago, and even I didn't really dirty it up that much anyway. So there is the blade, the Les George ESV blade. So clean that up here in a second. Let's get a little more. That's really interesting. The action geometry on this blade is interesting because these cutouts right here are where it has to, the blade has to work its way around the stop pin, which is really interesting. Okay, now these phosphor bronze washers are interesting in that you can also put them in tri-way Hinderer knives, and they will run without the use of the steel spacer that has to go in the knives. At least they're advertised as being able to do that. I've never done it myself. That's a story for a future video. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to use some ALG Go Juice for the Phosphor Bronze. I'm going to use it pretty liberally. Anything that doesn't fit in there is just going to fall out, and I'm just going to have to wipe it off anyway. So let's go ahead and put some in here. Now, I mean, this knife is very, very simple. It's just a matter of putting the blade back on and putting the other side of the frame back on and hoping it all just kind of slides into place. I think I'm going to put some Go Juice just right around the outside of the inside of the pivot hole. I'm just kind of stirring it around like that. Let me see. I'm not sure if that's getting on camera or not, but I'm just like dabbing it and working it around the inside here, just so that maybe it'll slide onto the knife better. Here goes nothing. Okay, and it seems like it came together. Look, there's freaking blood on the knife from it flying apart on me. Well, this knife has... Oh, shit, look at that. Well, this knife has shed blood, so I guess that's what I get. All right. Let's get the pivot back in there. Swap this out for the T15. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, even without the body screws put back in, it's already dead center, which, you know, if it's a $425 knife, it better be. All right, let's put the body screws back in. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised that this knife came flying apart. It is built to, you know, unless George doesn't play around, these knives are built to insanely tight tolerances, and they're very precision made. That's why they're so expensive. All right, now we got Phosphor Bronze in here. Let's see if it'll flip. I am willing to bet that it won't. It does look like it is right back to being dead center. Here we go. Oh, man. Yeah, so I'm getting blood on this damn knife from my finger. Let me try just playing around with it. There. I had to really put pressure on the pivot to force it open. So I think this might be a matter of, I might just have to come back to you in a future video and see if this broke in, or if I had to put the Phosphor Bronze back in the knife, or I put the bearings back in the knife. Right now, it seems like it's working. Well, failed it again. I keep getting... I'm going to do something about this thumb, and I will be right back, and we'll tinker with this knife a little bit more for the last couple minutes of the video. So, one thing I forgot to do is lube the detent path, because I have a special grease that I use for that. So I'm going to break loose this knife really quick once again, and I'm going to put some grease along that detent path. Hopefully no more blood will be spilled. Alright, let's see how this knife comes apart this time. Ooh, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on this knife. A lot of pressure. So it, like I said, it is machined so well that the tolerance are tight to such an extreme degree that it just wants to fling itself apart. Alright, so this is where aeroshell comes in. So this stuff I tend to use on a lot of my frame lock knives that have a detent path, because this stuff has a lot more staying power than any liquid lubricant ever will. I mean, you put this stuff down, it's pretty much going to stay where it is. Somebody's going to argue, yeah, well, it attracts like dirt and grime and other things, and while that is true, it also is easy to clean this thing out should that become necessary. All right. Let's try to get this thing back together again. I have to imagine the more you take this thing apart and put it back together, the easier it's going to be. I have to believe that. There's still little spots of blood on this knife from when it just came flying apart on me. All right, so let's get the detent screw back in. I'm just going to try to hand screw that down just a little bit. And then there we go. And then back to T8. So this video is already going a lot quicker and easier than the last couple did. I'm also really not doing much to this knife. It's a really small knife that was really easy to well, it was easy, but it was still tedious to get it apart. And then it didn't take much to wipe it down and clean it. And it didn't take hardly anything to lube the phosphor bronze washers and get them in there. So let's see now. And the pivot is way too tight. And I can already feel that aeroshell grease starting to have an effect. Like that is a much softer detent. And like I said, all the excess that comes out will just be wiped off. So it does take a much stronger, more forceful push of the flipper but this does run on Skiff thick phosphor bronze washers. So if you're somebody who is just like, I can't stand bearings, and you have a knife, inexpensive or expensive, that has bearings, there's a fair chance that Skiff Workshop is going to have phosphor bronze washers to put in there. Yeah. I'm going to carry this for a while and try to break it in and see how smooth it gets. Now, the last part is, of course, the LPS2, which is just used on the blade for a little extra protection. Because like I said, the LPS2 is going to leave a sort of micro film on here that, while it will come off with use, if you reapply it, it basically makes an already highly corrosion resistant blade even more corrosion resistant. Like, I imagine if you put LPS on a knife like this, you could probably take it diving and it would do okay. Just for laughs, I want to see, are these screws steel? No, the body screws are not. Oh, the pivot is steel, the body screws are not. I'm not sure why I bothered to check, I was just curious. Okay, and there you have it. We have a working Les George ESV with phosphor bronze washers. They installed pretty easily, without any trouble at all, and this knife is fully functional. It is not false shut anymore. You can't even shake it shut. Well, you kind of can. But what people need to remember is phosphor bronze will never behave like bearings. You know, I know people will take their Hinderer XM18 and put phosphor bronze in it, or even Teflon, and then they'll try it for literally 5 minutes, and they're like, nope, don't like it. Well, you have to break this stuff in, dude. It's not going to work like you expect it to the first, few flicks. And then even once it gets broken in, it's not going to be as drop shutty as bearings. It just won't, for whatever that's worth. So it's something you either have to live with or you're going to use something else. But there you have it. There's a Les George ESV with phosphor bronze washers in it, and it works. Questions, comments, put them in the comment section of the video. Otherwise, until next time, this is Ben from Ben's Blades telling you, carry a knife everywhere you legally can. I'll see you next time.